You describe a mindset that guides the technology. Could you describe this mindset? What does it consist of?
Well, it's pretty big, right? I mean, I ended up doing a whole book on it. But, most simply, I think the mindset is the idea that with enough money and technology, you can escape from the impact of developing technology and earning money in that way, right? So there are these, very wealthy technologists who know that they've really destroyed a lot of the planet and society, and that something's going to happen eventually, that they're going to have to pay the price, but they believe that they can outrace it. It's really, that's been the Western drive from the beginning. Can we keep going and escape from the consequences of what we've done?
Where does this mindset come from? Because in your book, you consider whether it comes from the position of power, that they have so much money and so much power, or is it a consequence of technology, of this certain technology?
Right. I think in some ways it's both. I was looking for sort of the origin of the mindset, and, you can find it in the Pharaoh in the Bible, in the Tower of Babel even. But, then more recently I looked to the founder of empirical science, Francis Bacon, where when he was selling the idea of empirical science, he said it would let us take nature by the forelock and hold her down and submit her to our will. So, the original scientist looking at science as a way of dominating nature, of controlling it, de-animating it. And when you think about the technologists today, and I realize, they're seeing technology really as a way to separate themselves from life, from going kind of one level above, from abstracting themselves, whether they're going to the ether or to Mars or, to the metaverse, or they're always, as Peter Thiel would say, going from 0 to 1, one level of abstraction above us. And then I thought, that's very much like capitalism, where in capitalism, you don't want to be the guy digging the ditch. You want to be one level above him as the person financing it, or one level above them as the one with stock in the financier, or one level above that as the derivative of the stock, of the finance, of the worker. So you keep going, again, one level above, one level above. And those two phenomena, sort of capitalism and digitality, both reinforced each other into keep scaling up and away, so that it ends up disconnecting these people from the real world, whether in terms of their empathy or their participation in society.
And would you say that there's a new quality because of the digital technology? So the principle is the same, like hundreds of years maybe, but maybe because of the digitalization it's a new quality?
Well, the inequalities are magnified. They're amplified. It's interesting. Digital technology amplifies almost anything you throw into it. And in the beginning of the book, I compare the digital technology to psychedelics, because in the U.S., they came at sort of in the same time, at the same place. It's California, 1990s. There was Timothy Leary and Terence McKenna and Stuart Brand and Whole Earth Review and Haight-Ashbury and Apple Computers and Steve Jobs and all. So it was all the same thing. And I thought that digital would amplify those crazy California hippie values. But, by 1993 or so, Wired magazine came and said, there's a different set of values that could be amplified here. The values of investment and capitalism. And they put right on the cover of Wired this idea called the long boom. And they said, thanks to digital technology, the global economy will grow exponentially, uninterrupted, forever. And it's Alan Greenspan, the chairman of the Federal Reserve of the United States, said, yeah, that sounds about right. Ayn Rand was correct. Now we're going to get that. So it did amplify the division of wealth that's sort of implicit in capitalism. But in capitalism, in the real world, there's mitigating factors. You live in the same town with the employees of your company, so you can only have them be so poor before they hate you and come after you. And in the digital, you're abstracted. right around Facebook, there's tent villages of people who've been impoverished by the activity of the company in their neighborhood. San Francisco is filled with homeless people now. It's visible how quickly it happens.
At the beginning of the book, you describe an encounter with tech billionaires. It was very funny to read for me, in a way.
It's
funny.
Yeah.
Who were thinking about how to escape Earth while keeping their stuff on board. What was your experience with these people? How did you experience that? What did you feel?
I mean, I was horrified, and I found it funny as well. Here were the wealthiest, most powerful people I'd ever been in the same room with, yet they felt utterly powerless to impact the future. But the best they could do would be to predict the disaster and then adapt to it. So they thought, something's coming, an event, a nuclear war, an electromagnetic pulse, an environmental collapse, economic unrest. And so they would need to retreat to a bunker, to an island, to a resort. And they were imagining, they're like little 5-year-old boys, like, oh, I'm going to have a moat around it, and it will be not just water, but I can make it turn into fire. Or I will have a crew of 50 Navy SEALs who, I've paid to come and defend me against the mobs when they come, and iron gates and all these things. And they imagined these things and paid a lot of money to build these fortresses that they have in various locations, but they haven't thought about second-order effects at all. So, I generally, my job is to tease these people. So I would ask them, I said, so, you have Navy SEALs coming. How are you going to pay for your Navy SEALs once your money is worthless? And they hadn't even considered that their Bitcoin won't have money. And then they start thinking these crazy thoughts like, oh, well, I could be the only one who knows the combination to the safe where we keep the food. Like, oh, Navy SEALs, they've got no experience getting information out of people, right? They'll spend their whole apocalypse getting waterboarded by their own security staff. So I was trying to teach them the idea that, well, maybe if you treat your employees well now, they won't turn on you later. Or then maybe your employees' families well, or your employees' friends. And then one of the guys, when I was talking about that, he goes, well, yeah, that sounds good, but where does it stop? Right. So with that, well, obviously, it's not supposed to stop. It's like if you treat the world as a place where that you see the rest of humanity as your community, then you don't want to trash them. But they don't. Right? They see the rest of humanity as inferior species. That we, you and I, and other humans, we're the larval stage. In their religion, they are the ones who sprout the wings and get off. So they can leave this piece of shit that is the planet Earth and the larva worms and maggots that are on it, like the first stage of the rocket. They leave us behind and they move on to whatever the next phase is. That's Peter Thiel's idea. You go from 0 to 1. You rise one order of magnitude beyond these pathetic ones.
But I can't imagine that it's much fun to be alone on Mars, yeah? To be alone with these people on Mars, it seems to me very boring.
Well, not you bring your harem of teenage girls, this is the Epstein thing, and Musk already has a small compound in Austin with, the women he's impregnated, he's reliving that sort of eugenic fantasy of, combining all the right, genetic partners to build his little race of children. I don't think they see that as a problem at all. They don't want to partner with humanity. Their understanding of humanity is different. So Musk does believe, and I do think he's not evil. People think he's evil. I do think he believes he's saving humanity. It's just his definition of humanity is different than yours and mine. Humanity to them is information. It's the DNA. It's this thing. And the future human, may not look like you or me. And that's...
That's also what Ray Kurzweil wrote, that information is the main thing, not the body or different things.
Right, that information, that what life is. He looks at life as a conveyor of information. And that once silicon life is better at handling complex information than biological life, then we should pass the torch and accept that it's okay if life as we understand it ends, because that life will continue. But what I've been experiencing is that there are, and again, I know this sounds crazy, but I believe there are aspects of biological incarnate existence that don't have code equivalents, that can't be represented in code. So code, as a human being, I understand code as a symbol system, and it's really good at representing aspects of life, but it doesn't do life. And this is what the tech bros can't get, is that like a doula, a death doula, someone sitting there with somebody who's dying, serves an actual function, a metabolic function, that we're here to help, metabolize one another's trauma, that you go to an ecstatic dance together and you experience something as a group. You don't have to be high. You don't have to be crazy to realize that when you hold your baby and look in its eyes and something happens, when the baby's not touched, babies die. That's not data that the babies are thriving on. It's something else. It's something that's very real that isn't on the digital file.
Would you say that these people realize that it is actually impossible to escape the world?
I think they believe they can escape the world, what you and I consider the world, because they it's partly a kind of autism that they're suffering from, that they view the world as a data structure and everything else as an illusion. And even some scientists supported this. I got in a big argument with Richard Dawkins, I put near the beginning of the book, where he has a completely materialist view of reality, that there's nothing else going on here that can't be explained with the atoms. And that's not my view. And I think it's a non-experiential view of the world. I understand. It's almost like you take the utilitarianism of a Jeremy Bentham and then express it, through digital technology, and it's all about where are you on the blockchain, and it's there's things happening in the world that are not explained on the blockchain. There's actual human experience.
So you mentioned the word autism. Would you say that they're in a way mentally ill a little bit, or?
Well, I wouldn't say that autistic people are mentally ill, no. But I would say that, like any of us, if we magnify one aspect of our psyche or personality or way of perceiving the world to the exclusion of all others, you end up in a weird place. If you magnify Wagner, you get a strange culture, right? There's romanticism, and without any marks and conditions on the ground, you end up in a different place. So if you magnify an abstracted view of humanity, you end up with effective altruism as your philosophy, which is what many of the Silicon Valley bros say, that you can do whatever you want to the world now as long as you earn enough money to pay for it later. And I don't think it works like that. I think you're much better off actually doing good things right now in the present, that the way you move through the world in the moment matters.
You also write these people are actually losers, but they are so rich. Yeah? So in what way they are losers?
I think they're losers because they are obsessing over the end of the world and how to protect themselves from the rest of humans. That's not a pleasant place to be, right? I mean, maybe it's just me, but I'd rather be part of the end of the world where we're loving each other and caring for each other than live forever as a distinct individual digital identity or something. That they're not having a good time. They're afraid of people. They're afraid of women. They're just because you have a lot of money and a lot of women that you can abuse doesn't mean that you're the winner, right? It means you have a certain kind of, I guess, power. But no, power is not is not fun. I mean, I remember Timothy Leary, the psychedelics guy, said to me, I said, how do you know what drugs to take? And he said, look into the eyes of someone on that drug and decide if that's somewhere you want to be. So I'd say look in the eyes of Mark Zuckerberg, look in the eyes of Elon Musk, look in the eyes of Peter Thiel and decide, is that how you want to be experiencing reality? And if it is, then try, make $1 billion and exploit people. Go for it.
So what do you think, why do we all fall for it and believe that they are changing the world for the better? I mean, I don't know if we believe it anymore, but right. for decades, we believed in it.
I know we did, didn't we? Or a lot of us did. Well, because the iPhone is snazzy, right? It's cool and it does all these things and it's bright and all. And then, we start to realize, wow, I need to get an app to help me recover from the apps that I've already, I need a wellness app to help heal me from the damage that was created by the other app and another app and another app. And you start to realize this thing is not so fun. I mean, it's called an iPhone, right? It's not a Wii phone. It's isolating. It takes you away from people. I think it really had to do with experiencing our quality of life. And many of us have gotten to the place where we realize, this, digital pornographic universe is not as much fun as walking with somebody, holding hands or doing something. But I think each of us find it at a different moment. When I first wrote this book in the States, it was, 2019, 2020 that I was writing. And a lot of my friends, a lot of young people, young men in particular, everyone wanted to be like Musk or invent a new meme stock and get on Doge. And it was like any drug, any speed. It just seemed exciting. I think some are waking up to it, but, in the United States, I mean, at least it looks like Musk is in the White House, that he's kind of running things. And apparently a majority of Americans are voting for that kind of techno-solutionist government. So we'll see what people believe.
How does technology affect society? You describe a decline in empathy toward the weaker. That's the result, what we see, how the technology impacts the society? That we lose our empathy for other people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technologies, a lot of them are communications technologies, but they're not total communication technologies. So you can be on a Zoom call with somebody and they can say they agree with you, but you can't see like the micro motions of their head. You can't see if their pupils are getting bigger, what their skin tone is doing. So all of the sort of painstakingly evolved mechanisms we've developed for social cohesion, to form rapport with other people, they don't function in these spaces. So you end up in a state of cognitive dissonance where the person says they agree with me, but my body doesn't feel that sense of agreement, so you move into a state of distrust. And it's strange. So the person says they agree, but you leave the call thinking, I don't trust them. Something's wrong. And that's the kind of social state that's engendered by digital technology. So then if you're one of the people who's using digital technology all the time and you're getting wealthy and powerful using it, but you're becoming less and less trustful of other people, you're losing the ability to create rapport, I mean, that's not very good. I teach in the university, and every year I have more undergraduate students come the first day of class with a note from their psychiatrist saying, please excuse Johnny from class participation because he has social anxiety. And I understand they were raised on COVID, on doing Zoom. They never learned how to be with other people. So, no, the technologies are not good for helping us establish genuine identification, it's organic compassion and empathy with others.
So what can we do against this development? How can we stop it?
I think the easiest, and it's New York Times and everyone says these are unsatisfying answers. So I preface, these are unsatisfying because they don't scale. is meet your neighbors, do favors for each other, really make human relationships with other people. And I get it, that your human relationships with other people may not make the big difference in everything, but when millions of people are relating to each other, it will. I mean, one thing I was suggesting people do is, is borrow things from your neighbor. I had this experience where I had to put up a picture of my daughter and I didn't have a drill to make a hole in the wall, and I was going to go to the Home Depot to buy a minimum viable product drill and use it once, put it in the garage, maybe take it out in 2 years and it won't work and I'll throw it out. And the huge carbon footprint and all the consumption and all because I'm afraid to go to my neighbor Bob's house and say, Bob, can I borrow your drill? Because if I borrow a drill from Bob, now I owe something to Bob. And I look at that as a problem, and it shouldn't be a problem. It's a solution. So now I have an excuse to invite Bob to the barbecue party for my daughter's graduation. And then the other neighbors are going to wonder, why has he invited Bob and not me? So I invite them. And now my whole block is there celebrating my daughter's graduation. And most of us see that as the nightmare. That's the problem we're trying to avoid, is knowing people. And it starts a chain of events. So now we're borrowing things. Now maybe we have one lawnmower on the block instead of 10, and we're consuming less, and the environment is less taxed. So we don't have to work as much because we don't have to earn as much because we don't have to buy as much. And I talked about this at a finance conference, and someone gets up at the end and says, well, yeah, that's all nice and good, but what about the drill company, right? What about the drill company? Yeah.
So last question. As a society, what should we do, the governments and so on? Should they break the big tech companies, or how should they regulate them? Should they regulate them better?
I don't know. I'm not a government person. So sure, you can try regulating. I mean, my points of intervention tend to be more social. I'm more of a cultural anthropologist. So I look at how our basic moment-to-moment human behavior can change big things. What does making more eye contact in your life do? As far as government, I mean, one easy thing they could do is raise capital gains tax and lower dividends tax. So you encourage companies to actually be more circular. You encourage companies to make revenue in the moment rather than just grow for the sake of growth. If they didn't have to grow so much, if they didn't have to grow exponentially, they wouldn't have to be as extractive and abusive to other people. So things like that. But sure, regulation, monopolies. But the problem is when you talk that plainly and say, okay, let's elect somebody who will break up the monopolies, like a Biden or Kamala or somebody, all the billions of dollars of tech money and all the platforms will start pushing for whoever's not going to regulate them. So I don't know that top-down government is the easiest way to affect change.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.